everyone, it is Artistic Sunrise here, coming back at you with another video. So today I have 2 books here to review and a stack of books here to go over with you guys for my October TBR. So let's hop into this video so that it's not an eternity long. So the first 2 books that I'm going to show you are books that I read in September. And yeah, I only read 2 books. I was kind of in a reading slump after reading all those books throughout the summer. I think I read like 25 books throughout the summer, and I was just overwhelmed with everything that I had, and I just needed to get into the schedule of things with school. So these books I kind of read throughout the month that we've been in school, because I've had a lot of extra time, and getting used to high school, it wasn't really that hard, to be honest with you. High school isn't much different than middle school, except for there are a lot more tests to study for. But other than that, it's not too different, so yeah. So let's get right into this. So the first book that I have to share with you is Tears of a Tiger by Sharon M. Draper. And I picked this up from a used bookstore, and I was really interested in it, and because she wrote Out of My Mind, which is a book, Out of My Mind is one of my favorite all-time books. If you have not seen my recent video, you won't know that I would sell my soul to read that for the first time again. Now this, you can tell that it's one of her first actual books that she wrote, and I don't know, it really wasn't my cup of tea. In this book we follow a boy, and his name is Andy, and he gets in a car crash one night because he was drunk while driving, and a bunch of his friends are in the car too, and in this car crash, his best friend ends up dying, and it was just a very depressing book, and I really wasn't in the right mindset to read this. So when I entered into it, I was looking for a kind of book that is just a revolutionary book type thing, where the main character, something bad happens to him or her, and they go through these phases of stuff like depression and stuff, and then they end up coming out stronger in the end. This is not one of those books. So I gave this a 2 out of 5 stars just because it really wasn't my cup of tea. I'm sure that if someone who liked the depressing books and just books that centered around kind of like death and stuff, I'm sure that they would probably like this, but it wasn't my cup of tea. I'm more of a fantasy girl, and yeah, so I give this a 2 out of 5 stars, and yeah, I'm sorry, but it just wasn't my cup of tea. So the next book that I have here is The Blood of Olympus by Rick Riordan. Oh my gosh, I cannot ask for a better ending to this series. This is the 5th book in the Heroes of Apollo series. In the Heroes of Olympus series. And oh my gosh, a lot happened in this book. I was shedding tears. I was laughing. I was angry. A lot of emotions came from this book. I read it in one day. Yeah. And so, if you don't know, then the Heroes of Olympus series is kind of a spin-off series to the Percy Jackson and Olympian series. And in this series, we follow not only Greek demigods, but we also follow Roman demigods, and you get to see how the two how the two mythologies collide. Sorry, I had a brain fart. And I just thought that this was such a beautiful ending to this, and in the next series, the Trials of Apollo series, which I am halfway through the first book, I am loving it. But in the Trials of Apollo series, you get to see the story kind of continue on, and yeah, so, yeah. And also, with this book, you get to see how this series gets started with the ending of this series. I gave this a 5 out of 5 stars. This is probably my second favorite. The House of Hades is always going to take first in my heart. I'm staying strong. But like I said, I am halfway through this series. The first book in this series, The Trials of Apollo, which the first book is The Hidden Oracle by Rick Riordan, and I am absolutely loving this. This is much funnier than I thought it would actually end up being. In this book, you follow the god Apollo, and Zeus wants to punish him for something I cannot say, and Zeus turns him mortal and basically bans him from Olympus. And so in this book, you're just following Apollo, and you're just seeing how he develops like human emotions, and not really develops, he already has them, but you're seeing how he copes with being a human rather than having his god powers. So this book is hilarious right now, and I am absolutely loving it. It is action-packed, and I could not ask for a better read to get me out of this reading slump. So now I'm moving on to my October TBR. I've got this stack of books. There are 6 books here, and yeah, let's hop right into this. So I'm just gonna start off at the bottom here. We're just gonna pretend this never happened, okay? Alright. I'm starting off at the bottom for the main reason of we're going from least spookiest to spookiest. Least spookiest. I'm moving on. The first book here is kind of a if I get to it, I get to it type of book. It's The Darkest Legacy by Alexander Bracken, and yes, I still need to read this, so yeah. But in this book, it's kind of like after the whole Darkest Minds trilogy happens, this is like, I'm pretty sure this is 10 years down the road or 5 years down the road or something like that. And something happens to Zoo, and it creates this whole line of problems, and she doesn't know who she can trust. And I love that we're following Zoo's perspective of this, and I just cannot wait to read this. So this is one of those books that if I get to it, I get to it. If not, it's not a rush. If I don't get to it this month, I will probably get to it next month. So the next book here is Hollow City, the second novel of Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children by Ransom Riggs. Now, I loved the first book in this series, and I still haven't gone through and read the second book. I just feel like this is the right time to read this because this is kind of like a paranormal book, and I want to read this book. I've wanted to read this book. I just didn't feel in the mood. But now I'm in a spooky, kind of paranormal mood. Now I'm in the mood for this. So, essentially, in the first book in this series, we follow a boy, and after his grandpa passes, all this weird stuff starts to happen to him, and he finds out that his grandpa was actually killed by this monster that only he can see. And so he ends up going to this island for what his therapist said is good. So he goes to this island with his dad and discovers a whole bunch of kids that his grandpa used to tell him about. And he finds out that they're actually true. And it starts a bunch of stuff between these kids and him, and he just doesn't know what to do, and it involves action-packed scenes. There's a little bit of a romance in there, and I just love the first book, and I can't wait to read the next book. So, the next book that I have here is The Last Magician by Lisa Maxwell. And I have been wanting to read this book since 7th grade. I've had it on my TBR since 7th grade, and I need to read this book, and I'm gonna read this book. So, this book, in this book, you follow, you're in this world of modern day New York where magic doesn't really exist, except it does. So, in this book, magicians used to go around, and now they're almost completely extinct. And in this book, you follow a girl, and she discovers this world and finds out that she has magical powers type thing, and she becomes a mage, which is what they call the magicians. And yeah, I did a horrible job explaining that. But so, yeah, I'm super excited to read that. So the next book here also has to do with magicians and a circus. This is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. And again, I've had this book on my TBR for forever now. One of my mom's friends gave this to me and said, once you read it, pass it on to another person. And so I need to keep this going, and once I read it, hopefully I'll have a person in mind to actually pass it on to. But I'm super excited to read this. This just seems like such a good story, and I should probably tell you about it. So in this story, we follow these two people, and they're magicians, and the night circus is where they kind of duel. But what they don't know is that it's actually a duel to the death, so only one of them will make it out alive. And the rules to the night circus is that it only shows up at night in one specific season, and it never shows itself in the same place twice. So there's a little romance going on between I'm pretty sure there's a little romance going on between the two magicians also. So I'm just super excited to read this, and I need this in my life right now. So the second to last book that I have on this TBR, it's quite a big one. Actually, it's not. It's less than 600 pages. But this is The Diviners by Libba Bray. And I have been holding off on reading this book for this month for the main reason of I have heard it's spooky, and I want to read it in a spooky month. So I'm reading it this month. I don't know how crazy I'm being right now, but probably pretty crazy. But this is kind of just like a dark kind of historical fiction with a magical twist on it. And so it sounds so interesting to me, and this is the first book in a trilogy too. I'm pretty sure it's a trilogy. There's at least 3 books out. And I can't wait. It's got ghosts and demons, and the diviners, I'm pretty sure they're actually magicians. So I'm very excited to read this, and I just can't wait that I finally get to read this in the month of October. So the last and final book that I have here, it's the spookiest. I said I was holding off for the spookiest, and I'm hoping to read this over the weekend with Halloween, that Halloween is on. So if you don't know yet, Halloween is on a blue moon, which is the second full moon of the month. And it's on a Saturday. So I figured I can stay up all of Friday night reading The Night Shift by Stephen King. And, this is a collection of scary stories. And my uncle gave this to me, and he says that a lot of the stories in here are funny, too. So I'm just like, might as well read one of his books that I have. I have 4 of his books, and I want to read at least one of them during the month of October. If I get to more, then I get to more. If not, at least I've got one on my TBR. But I'm super excited to read this. I just feel like this is going to be the book that really gets me into the Halloween spirit on Halloween. And it's got stories in here like The Ledge, Trucks, Children of the Corn, Gray Matter, The Boogeyman. It's the Graveyard Shift. I'm excited to read this. If you cannot tell, I'm very excited to read this. So yeah, that was my October TBR and books that I read in September. If you have any questions or any book recommendations for me, make sure to let me know down in the comments below. And that is it for this week's video. I hope you have a wonderful week. And yeah, bye.